Hi, welcome back to Salos Wildlife Park and Planet Zoo. Today we're building an oasis and cafe for the American alligators. Let's go. Hi, hello, and hey to all of you watching. Thank you so much for being here. So I didn't record a lot of the ugly work on this habitat because it was my first time doing an underwater tunnel. I was following multiple YouTube tutorials throughout, and once I realized what I was doing, it was fairly easy, but I just wasn't sure of myself, and it took me quite a few tries to get something that I was decently happy with. So yeah, thank you to multiple creators, but specifically Adam Up, who did a wonderful tutorial on this that helped me the most, because I really wanted to tackle this and just didn't know where to start. So yeah, I just really wanted to build a unique viewing experience and push myself a little bit because I felt like I was getting too much into the same kind of habitat structure. So I wanted to do one last aquatic species in this little entry bit of the park. Just to cap it all off, I thought it would be a pretty good idea to have a main event before the park splits into multiple directions. And I was briefly torn between the alligators and the Californian sea lions, but to be honest, I haven't built for the alligators before, and I thought that would be a really cool thing to walk underneath an alligator sunbathing just casually. So yeah, that's what I went with, and it worked out because I had a bit of an awkward space right next to the habitat coming from the area that leads from the peccaries, and I really wanted to make use of it instead of just filling it with foliage. So we do actually put a small cafe in there that I end up calling the Gator Cafe, and I think it's really cute. But back to this part of the build, it's I'm just again using these Indonesian brick pieces throughout. I've used them in pretty much everything in the park, so they provided a great structure for this hideous tunnel that was left over from the pathing work that I did. The habitat itself is actually really simple and not a whole lot to show besides just me layering a bunch of rocks down to create somewhat natural looking pool for these gators. I also I wasn't sure where I wanted to have two viewing galleries, obviously the one underneath the water and one on land, and I was kind of playing around with which side I wanted the land one to be on, but I ended up putting it on the other side because I wanted the guests to first walk under the water and see them that way as kind of like almost a surprise as they're going down into the tunnel. I also originally was only going to have the one alligator. The OG alligator's name was Beth, and she's there modeling the habitat, making sure everything works for me. But when Beth was out sunbathing or having a snack or something, the water was pretty much redundant. So the Zoopedia allowed me to have two female alligators without too much fuss, and because I have breeding turned on specifically for a few of the other species in the park, those being the peccaries and the next habitat species that I'm not spoiling, I wanted to just allow them to live out their best girly lives. And yeah, so we have two female alligators. Their names are Beth and Tempest. I named Beth, but Tempest was the randomly generated name, and I thought that's just such an epic and girl boss name, so I kept it. And yeah, that is exactly what they are. They're just my little girl bosses. If they're not both in the water, then one is, so my idea of having them, having two in there works out perfectly, and they're happy with each other. So, and as you can see, I've made this habitat absolutely huge. So both of the girls have their own space whenever they need it. So I am focusing on American species for the park. It's meant to be kind of like a wildlife reserve slash wildlife park. Not really sure if like a real life comparison exists, but the idea is that it was taken over from an old schoolhouse, and a couple of investors made it very pretty and very worthwhile, expanding onto like the natural history museum that naturally grew from the original founders. So the idea is that most of these animals are in rehabilitation programs, or they might need like a place to live out the rest of their lives because they've developed an illness or an injury or something like that. Hence why I'm not too concerned about breeding or anything like that. I have turned aging on, but it's slowed down the maximum amount, or I guess the minimum amount, which is I think 5 times slower than the base game. So I'm really hoping to just have some babies come in and not lose any of the animals I've adopted. So this kind of tunneling, and maybe I skipped a step or something, but it left me with these horrible, ugly bits of terrain that I couldn't do anything with. So naturally they just got covered up with rocks, because I didn't have enough rocks, and a bunch of foliage as well. The inside of the tunnels are quite plain. I've added, you can see them, the little dark planks that I thought would be kind of like the grippy things that they put on slanted surfaces to like create friction when you're walking down them. They're kind of like sandpaper almost. And, you know, some other like safety bits, lots of lights and things like that. Some education boards, but I might honestly create a few custom billboards and try and include a bit more like education and I guess the holes going down into the tunnel itself, because even though it is a short walk for our guests, and they technically would know what they're going down towards, because I have signs saying alligator viewing this way, I don't know, it seems like a few more details are needed, but I haven't gotten around to creating those billboards yet. That being said, you know, if you have like an alligator, even like a crocodile, information point in any other park that you've been to or seen online, let me know, because I don't remember any that I've seen that stick out in my mind. So we're finally onto the cafe. The guests are always complaining that they need a drink, and despite me putting in a cafe and the entry point and the restaurant, they're still complaining at this point in the park. So seeing this weird little corner that I had, I decided to, make use of it in the best way that I could. I went ahead and built it from just the plaster pieces. I've used these in similar colors throughout the park, so I think it does fit. I also thought having essentially where the guests would queue in front of the stand right next to the entrance to the viewing tunnel would be a problem, but I've limited my guests to the minimum, which is like 500, and so far it's been fine. A bit off topic, but I've seen a lot of Planet Zoo 2 speculation videos and posts and that kind of thing, and while I do have a wish list of my own, and let me know if you'd be interested in seeing that, because I have lots of thoughts. One of my top ones that I always come back to is I just want better vendors. Even if it's just like these stands, but they're recolorable, or they're like customizable, and like, you know, how we can just like turn on the props for the exhibit boxes. If we could say, yeah, I want to have like this display, this coffee machine, this register, or just, you know, have it here instead of there or something, I think that would just make these a whole lot better. That being said, though, they are quite easy to cover up, so I can't really complain too much. So the build. The majority of these blueprints and decorations that I'm using came from the coffee shop set from Toves. So really great set. I used it in the entry cafe as well, so it looks fairly cohesive. And even though the juice stand or whatever. In real life we have juices and coffee sold at the same places. So, and the seating area, I wanted it to feel a bit kind of like closed off and cozy. So I started thinking about beer gardens in the UK, and specifically ones in London or like on a high street where they're kind of walled or like fenced off from the traffic and everything like that. But first we need to fix up the backstage a little bit. So that door at the back wall will actually lead to the Alligator's backstage. So I wanted this to be exclusively, maybe this indoor space to be exclusively for the cafe, but outside it is a bit of like a mismatch of the props and everything. And as for any other backstage, I just plopped down the sets that I wanted to use. Before I got my very real job of being a content creator, I worked in kitchens mostly, and specifically I was a chef. I was always on the line, so these backstage areas are just almost always super chaotic, overflowing with things. And as I said in my last video, I like to tell a little bit of a story, so I tried to make it look like this was delivery day, which is always the most chaotic. So just boxes of things thrown everywhere they will fit, and they'll organize them later. And because it's a juice thing, it's a smoothie stand specifically, I think. Lots of fruit as well, which is great because those are a lot of the props that we have in the game for animals. I don't know what I would do without the conservation pack. It is so vital to so many of my builds and these pieces that I get from the workshop. But if you're curious where I got any of these items, I'm happy to link you to the collections or the sets that I've gotten from off the workshop. I am on PC, so I can't guarantee they'll be available to you, but happy to help out if I can. Just leave me a comment. And again, thank you so much for being here. My last video did really well. My shorts are also doing pretty decently, so a lot better than I expected, to be honest. So thank you all so much, and for the lovely words as well. I've gotten a few comments that have really made my past couple of weeks brighter. Here I always try and angle things so they look like they've actually been set down by a human instead of a robot. And again, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, especially if you've worked in a position where you're dealing with both the front and the back of the house, when one is super busy, the other one starts falling apart a little bit. So my horrible idea to torture these wonderful Planet Zoo employees was just they got a massive delivery, we're in the middle of sorting it, and then of course there is a big rush. So the build itself. So this brick building to the left here is actually essentially like a staff center, and because the guests are seeing it, I've added kind of like a backstage tours info sign to make it a bit more acceptable, and the guests don't seem to mind it, but I still wanted it to feel a bit closed off from the actual path. And I did think about having the brick flooring or the pathing look the same throughout, but again, I just thought it was good to keep both the staff area and the guest seating area separate, and I think the different colored brick really helps with that. It's also great because between the walls and the trees and the rock work, the sun doesn't really reach the courtyard that much, so it provides a decent bit of shade and rest for the guests. For the seating, I kept it really simple, and as always, I can't recommend free build enough. I'm a much happier Planet Zoo player with it. I don't know how creators do it without. And before we move on from this bit of the build, the water treatment facilities that are in the back actually don't bother the guests. I think the range hits like one or two of the picnic tables, but to be honest, if it gets to me, I'll just turn that option off in sandbox settings because they're now behind a wall and a maintenance door, so no logical person would really complain, but what can we do? Speaking of Planet Zoo being the weirdo that it is, we have a lot of cinematics today. I'm pretty proud of them. It took me 3 tries to get a selection that I was happy with, so I hope you guys enjoy. I've also included a few special shots, 2 of which are areas of the zoo that I've only shown on my Instagram and to the Discord servers that I'm in. It's the backstage for the rhea, llama, and alpaca habitat that we built a few weeks ago, and I didn't record any of it, so I wanted to put a little kind of snippet in some video, and this is that video. But between this cafe and the peccaries is a bit of an awkward junction between the paths, so I used it for a few exhibits, and it's just bullfrogs, but I put 3 together in the hopes that it looks like one cohesive exhibit altogether, and I've just covered it with a bunch of rocks. I actually really like that corner of the zoo, so I'm happy to finally share it here. In the final real step of this habitat, this area, I should say, was this final land viewing area. I personally really struggle with viewing galleries, and I don't know why. Just my instincts are to make everything open and viewable. So for people who are able to create essentially like frames around their habitats and, specific points to, get a look at the animals and everything, I really admire it. So I am trying, but here I've just tried to make the path look a bit fancy. I've pulled these rope and wood fences that I made for the marshy park wetland thing next to the entrance plaza that we built for these swans and mallards. So with this last bit of foliage work, the build is pretty much done. I decided to go for a sunshade to protect everyone from the heat and the grasslands of the United States, because they do complain, and I'm trying to get better about it. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. This was a fun, if not stressful, build, but every day we get a little bit better. So yeah, thank you so much for the love, especially in the last video, and I'll leave you guys with the cinematics. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much. Bye.